Hey everybody, Johnny the Queer POTUS here, and as if 2020 couldn't get any crazier, President Trump has coronavirus. While many of us are shocked at the news, reporters are complaining about the lack of information coming out of the White House on President Trump's condition. Many are angry that the president's callous behavior toward the threat of coronavirus put him directly in harm's way. As we'll see in this short video, this is nothing new. Whether it's Honest Abe or JFK, presidents have been reckless with their health and safety, as well as extremely secretive for a long time. So let's take a look now at the history of presidential illness and the constitutional mechanisms for dealing with such situations. As always, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and please become a supporter on Patreon today. Links in the description below. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president, he took a train from Springfield to Washington, D.C. At every stop, enthusiastic crowds gathered to greet the new president. But when Lincoln arrived in Baltimore, security concerns heightened. Maryland was a slave state, one only loosely wedded to the Union, which Abraham Lincoln had been elected to save. Any number of Confederate sympathizers may have lurked between Baltimore and Washington, so Lincoln was ushered into the Capitol on a secret train in the middle of the night. One detail of Lincoln's transport later caught a mocking press's gaze. The president-elect had exchanged his signature top hat for a flat cap. Days later, exaggerated reports of the president being spirited under the cover of night to his own inauguration in a Scotch bonnet and a kilt filled the presses. Lincoln never forgot how ridiculous the story made him look, and he became notoriously callous about his security from that day forward. Though guards constantly pleaded with the president to be more careful, Lincoln would go on long horse rides across Washington with no security detail. When confronted about it, Lincoln would throw something akin to a temper tantrum. "I cannot be shut up in an iron cage and guarded. If I have business at the War Office, I must take my hat and go there. And if to kill me is within the purpose of this rebellion, no precaution can prevent it. You may guard me at a single point, but I will necessarily be exposed at others. People come to see me every day, and I receive them, and I do not know but that some of them are secessionists or engaged in plots to kill me." Lincoln tended to believe in fate. If something was meant to be, it would be. It was a view informed by his Calvinist reading of the Bible, as well as perhaps his affinity for Shakespearean tragedy. But there was another reason Lincoln felt this way. He wanted to look like a big, strong man. No president in history up to that point had ever had a security escort, and Lincoln did not want to be the first. Looking at this quote, I couldn't help but hear echoes of President Trump's recent appearance at Walter Reed Hospital.
I just didn't want to stay in the White House. I was given that alternative. Stay in the White House, lock yourself in, don't ever leave, don't even go to the Oval Office. Just stay upstairs and enjoy it. Don't see people, don't talk to people, and just be done with it. And I can't do that. I had to be out front, and this is America. This is the United States. This is the greatest country in the world. This is the most powerful country in the world. I can't be locked up in a room upstairs and totally safe and just say, hey, whatever happens, happens. I can't do that.
It seems President Trump, too, does not want to be locked up in an iron cage. I think it's a fundamental rule with presidents that you just can't tell them nothing. They seem to think they are invincible. And Trump and Lincoln are by far not the only two presidents to act this way. In 1893, President Grover Cleveland began his second non-consecutive term as president. The country's economy was on the verge of total collapse, and Cleveland needed to get to work. However, doctors soon discovered a cancerous bump on the roof of his mouth. Cleveland's first thoughts were how to keep the news from the country. As Cleveland biographer Matthew Algeo puts it,
"It would be a big deal today. It was an even bigger deal then, because at the time there was a stigma attached to cancer. Newspapers would call it the dread disease."
In particular, Cleveland worried about the stock market, which even today seems to beat with the heart of the president. So a plan was hatched to whisk President Cleveland onto a presidential yacht. Under the guise of a fishing trip, Cleveland and his doctor set off for the open seas, where the surgery to remove the tumor took place. The story quickly leaked into the tabloid press, but Cleveland denied all the reports.
The report you saw regarding my health resulted from a most astounding breach of professional duty on the part of a medical man. I tell you, in strict confidence, for the policy has been to deny and discredit this story.
The truth was finally recognized 24 years later, when witnesses to the surgery confirmed what had happened. By that time, President Cleveland was long dead. Many presidents have similar stories. Abraham Lincoln had a serious bout of smallpox after delivering the Gettysburg Address in the winter of 1863. Only years later did it become known that Lincoln nearly died from the illness. President Wilson, while downplaying a pandemic of Spanish flu, actually caught the disease himself. This would be a dry run for what was to be the most scandalous secret in the history of the presidency. During a speaking tour in 1919, Wilson suffered a stroke and had to cut the tour short. The public was made aware of the president's illness, but reports from the White House described Wilson as well on his way to recovery. He wasn't. Wilson would spend the rest of his presidency locked in the White House, bedridden and barely able to speak. A once prominent figure who appeared regularly in public now suddenly disappeared altogether. Even members of Wilson's own cabinet were not privy to his condition, lest they insist on his resignation. The lack of information on Wilson's condition created a vacuum that was filled with conspiracy theories. In one instance, people had noticed a set of bars over a White House window, and some were saying Wilson was being held captive at the White House against his will. It turned out that Teddy Roosevelt had put the bars there when he was president because his kids kept throwing baseballs through the White House windows. One of the few people who had 24 access to the president was his wife, Edith. And since no one was permitted to see the president, all business was conducted through her. This led to the view that during the last year of Wilson's presidency, the First Lady was the real president. Fiercely loyal to her husband, Edith denied these rumors, though historians still argue whether she truly was the first female president. Wilson's incapacitation led to disaster. Race riots and violent strikes spread across the nation, with no word from the president. The Treaty of Versailles, which Wilson had painstakingly negotiated in Paris just before his stroke, was itself struck down by Republicans in the Senate. Wilson left the White House a broken man, and the true extent of his illness was only revealed years later. When his replacement, Warren G. Harding, a sprightly young man from Ohio, leapt up the Capitol steps to take his oath of office, he cut a stark contrast to the deteriorated, wheelchair-bound Wilson. But Harding was hiding his own set of health problems. Harding suffered from heart disease, a fact which came to light when the president very suddenly died 2 years into his first term. In recent years, with the advent of mass media, hiding the president's health condition from the public has become an ever more impossible task. In August 1955, President Dwight D Eisenhower took a vacation to Colorado.
President Eisenhower seemed the picture of health in these films made in Denver just before his sudden heart attack.
During a round of golf at Cherry Hill Golf Club, Eisenhower complained of chest pain. He was soon whisked away to the hospital where it was discovered he'd had a heart attack. The press soon flooded in, demanding news of the president's condition.
Washington affectionately welcomed the president, who ultimately recovered. Only 2 days after Ike's seizure, stock market values tumbled over $12 billion in value. This time we had been lucky.
Ike recovered, but photos of the president in a wheelchair revealed a diminished version of the man who had once commanded Allied troops across Europe. America chose a much younger president to replace Ike in 1960.
The torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans.
But even the young, exciting Kennedy guarded a deep secret. The president suffered from Addison's disease, a fact kept from the public for the duration of his presidency. Looking back at Eisenhower's near-death experience, many politicians realized that while there was a contingency in the case of a president's death, there was no plan on how to deal with a president's incapacitation due to illness or injury. So in 1963, a 25th Amendment to the Constitution was proposed to deal with such a situation. The proposed amendment included a provision stating, in case of the inability of the president to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the said powers and duties shall devolve on the vice president until inability be removed. The assassination of President Kennedy later that year further demonstrated the need for such an amendment. It was passed in the summer of 1965 and ratified in 1967. The amendment included a series of ways in which a president could be removed or temporarily removed in the case of illness or incapacity. It seems like a logical thing to have a contingency plan for such instances, but on the other hand, The more ways the Constitution provides for removing a president, the more chances there are that it could be abused. In 2017, for example, after President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, Acting Director Andrew McCabe held discussions with high officials on initiating a process to remove President Trump, invoking the 25th Amendment. Now, far be it from me to sound like an originalist, but it seems like this would be a use of the amendment far from the original intent of its drafters. That said, the amendment has been properly used many times in our recent history. It was used twice during the presidency of Ronald Reagan, once after he was shot by an assassin, and once during a surgery, empowering Vice President Bush to take on the duties of the president. When President George W. Bush underwent anesthesia for minor surgery, he evoked the 25th Amendment as well. On June 29, 2002, from 7:09 to 9:24 a.m., Dick Cheney was effectively the President of the United States. As Donald Trump continues to battle coronavirus at Walter Reed Medical Center, he too may invoke the 25th Amendment to allow Vice President Pence to oversee the country while he undergoes medical procedures. The presidency carries a great deal of pressures and responsibilities. One wrong move, one careless turn of phrase, can send the entire stock market into a tizzy, can undermine the public trust, and can exacerbate uncertainty across the globe. The president tends to be a magnet for exaggerated tales and outrageous conspiracy theories. I'm sure many of you remember the Hillary is dying conspiracy that blew up after she slightly fell at a 9/11 commemoration. So it's pretty easy to understand why presidents are so guarded about their health. Now, as we await information on President Trump's condition, it's important to remember that the White House will give as little information as it feels it has to, and that it will try to paint a rosier picture of the president's condition than reality may suggest. As always, keep your eyes and ears open. Don't fall too hard for unconfirmed reports. And most importantly, socially distance, and always wear a mask. Thanks, everybody.